Hey, how's everyone doing today? So, my name is John Bird. I'm the solutions architect with AWS. I've been with AWS for about 2 years now, and primarily working with enterprise customers. Wanted to take the time. I was a customer prior to joining AWS, so I've had an opportunity to go to reInvent. I can definitely recommend that if you have the opportunity, please take the opportunity to go to reInvent. It's an experience unlike any other conference that you'll go to. With that being said, it's typically in the later part of the year, that first that either that last month, that last week of November, that first week of December. So if you don't have plans, definitely kind of look forward to it for this year. To kick off, I'm going to jump straight into the security content, and then I'll cover some of the networking stuff before handing it off to Marwan. If there are any questions or anything, if you don't mind, just use the chat to continue to converse with us. We'll continue to keep an eye on the chat. If there are any questions at the end, we can have an opportunity to sit down and catch up with y'all if time allows. So let's just get right into it. So one of the first things I wanted to go over was Amazon Inspector for Lambda functions. Customers have mentioned before that they want to be able to analyze their mixed workloads where you have EC2 and containers and Lambda functions. This is a release that's been starting as a part of that release. We're actually able to scan functions that are based in Java, Node, JS, and Python, and it'll continuously scan those functions in your account. And by default, it's going to automatically scan all of them if you turn it on. So there's not a need to go through and enable it for every individual Lambda. This also enables the connectivity back into Security Hub and therefore Event Bridge for the larger automation efforts and workflows around security remediation. Additionally, we announced Guard Duty for RDS protection, and that's going to be an expansion of Guard Duty's threat protection. It uses ML anomaly detection to detect suspicious logins for Aurora databases, and it's going to help customers better protect their data stored in those Aurora databases. You can enable this with a single click in the Guard Duty console, and since it is a Guard Duty implementation, it can be managed at scale across your organization. This is also just like the last conversation around Inspector. It's going to allow connectivity in with Security Hub for that larger security operations effort. So verified permissions is a scalable, fine-grained permissions management and authorization service for custom applications. So if you're leveraging or if you're beginning to build applications from the ground up, leveraging verified permissions as a part of that development process is going to definitely give you an edge when it comes to authentication and authorization down the road using native AWS services. It's going to use a Cedar policy language that's going to define those fine-grained permissions for the application users. And then one of the biggest advantages for this is it's going to allow you, one, to adhere to that zero trust architecture or approach, but it's also going to allow much greater ease for auditing and compliance requirements, where previously some of this information would have to be proven through application code. Now it can actually be aggregated together and presented in an auditable way. The one of the coolest parts about this is the ability to accelerate that application development by decoupling the authorization from the business logic. So you're able to save time and resources using the centralized permissions and that policy lifecycle management approach as well. Customers can define a fine-grained authorization model, create policies from templates, and use those to enforce those controls within the API gateway and AWS AppSync. Like I mentioned before, it's going to allow you to review policy model changes and monitor authorization requests using the Amazon Verified Permission service. And then also, you're going to be able to create and centrally store those policy-based access controls, which will hopefully reduce the overall latency of your application having to reach out further for that authentication process. Amazon Security Lake is a new security service built to automate the sourcing, aggregation, and normalization of data, specifically to security-related data. And that's going to basically provide you a data lake for your cloud, for your security logs and metrics, hence Security Lake. You're going to be able to reduce the operational complexity to collect security logs and events. So you're going to make data storage and query much more efficient versus having to look across multiple solutions. You're going to be able to reduce the security solutions ingestion costs by providing that control over what's going to get ingested, as opposed to turning on the hose and pushing all data to a solution. And it's going to also enable you direct access to your data, provide long-term search capabilities around that data, and also provide some ML and analytics on top of the data itself. The biggest kind of takeaway that I do want to touch on, I will actually come up to in a couple of slides. So we'll talk about the OCSF format in just a couple of slides. We've also introduced the proactive compliance controls through AWS Config. Previously, we had detective controls, and with config, we would use preventative controls through control tower and service control policies, which I'll talk about in just a little bit. But with config, we've also enabled the proactive compliance. This is going to allow you to do that validation as a part of the CI/CD pipeline, compliance requirements before the resources are actually being built or deployed. And so we've kind of going back to Control Tower, we've also introduced the comprehensive controls management. This is going to give you the ability to look at all three, the preventive, detective, and proactive controls in your accounts across your organization. It's also going to allow you to provide larger framework to framework mapping. So as you're trying to meet those multiple compliance standards, you don't necessarily have to worry about checking the box 3 or 4 different times for the same effort. This is what I was talking about with the Security Lake slide a second ago. The Open Cybersecurity Schema framework is a cross-vendor standard schema that has been built into Security Lake. You've got companies like Cisco, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto. All of these have kind of come on board as security partners and used a really query efficient Apache Parquet approach with the OCSF format. So you're going to be able to quickly access that data with a normalization across all of your providers. Or I shouldn't say all, numerous providers. So the only thing I really want to touch on as a part of the networking portion of this is a preview for VPC Lattice. And so modern applications are being built to use modular and distributed components. And each of these components is a service that's going to implement its own set of, its own subset of functionalities. And to make these services communicate with each other, we need to find a way to let them discover where they are, authorize access, and route traffic. Currently, building the cross VPC architecture is something that takes a lot of deliberate consideration and forethought. VPC Lattice really makes it a lot easier for customers by finding and connecting to services across accounts and across VPCs without having to worry about the application being without having to worry about networking those application aware routing. So some of the benefits that we've seen from customers, delivery for the services faster and operate efficiently with much simplified service connectivity across those VPCs. Like I said before, being able to have the VPC take on some of the effort for building those interconnectivities across accounts and across other VPCs definitely is something that we've heard positively from our customers about that removal of the undifferentiated heavy lift that they currently deal with. This is going to allow you to connect your services consistently across instances, containers, and serverless. So you don't necessarily have to worry about building those preconceived considerations and locking yourself into something that may not be as flexible or agile to build against in the future. So there are a bunch of purposes around the VPC lattice, but focusing on these four, we're able to improve the service to service security and support that zero trust architecture using those centralized access controls, the authentication, and the context specific authorization. We're able to apply granular traffic controls such as request level routing and weighted targets for the blue, green, and canary deployments. And we can connect thousands of services across VPCs and accounts without increasing that network complexity. And then last thing, you're able to monitor and troubleshoot the service to service communication with detailed access log and metrics that capture the request type, volume of traffic, error rates, response time, and more. You're not relying on trying to parse through VPC logs to do your troubleshooting. And that actually wraps up my portion of the content. I'm going to hand the mic over to Marwan and let him pick up from here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I will go ahead and take over screen share. And I'm hoping it's loading. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Marwan Hale, and I am a solution architect here at AWS. I've been with AWS for, I'll say, 3 years, a little bit over 3 years. Before becoming an SA, I was a cloud support engineer, so I was standing on the other side, understanding kind of like people like kind of pain points where they're having issues. So with that, I'll go ahead and start. So I will be talking about compute, serverless, and containers. So the first thing that I want to introduce here is our next generation Nitro system, which is the Nitro V5. To give kind of a quick intro to what is Nitro, so AWS Nitro system is the underlying platform for our next generation of EC2 instances. That, of course, enabled us, AWS, to innovate faster, further reduce cost to our customer, and deliver added benefits like increased security and new instances type. So Nitro is the reason that AWS got started building custom chips, and it remains one of the most important reasons EC2 provides distinguish performance and security. And just to bring here that it was created by like a custom, like a microelectronic company that was acquired in, I believe in 2015 by AWS, and it's called Annapurna Lab. And yeah, so every new instance that was introduced since 2014 was built on the Nitro system, but the news story here is that we are in version 5, which means we have a lot of experience with this since like 2014. So with that being said, the version 5 has double the amount of the transistors, 50% more faster DRAM speed, and double the PCIe bandwidth. And what I mean by this is they're able to support 60% higher packets per second with 30% reduction in packet latency, all while reducing overall power by 40% per watt. Next slide here, what I will talk about is our newest generation of C and HPC Graviton machines. And also we have another, like a new generation of memory optimized that are Intel, using like an Intel CPU, which are called the R7 IZ instances. So I don't know if you can notice right there. So we did some little changes in our how we put our instance types. So after the number, you will see either the letter G or the letter I or others. But that I right there, it stands for Intel, and that G right there stands for Graviton. What they all have in common right here is that they have about 200 gig, of network bandwidth, which mean for higher throughput. The C7GN here instances are designed for demanding like network intensive workloads, such as like network virtual appliances. What I mean by this, like firewall, virtual routers, load balancers, or you can also use it for like data analytics or tightly coupled cluster computer jobs. For the HPC 7G, these instances are designed to give you the best price performance for tightly coupled compute, intensive HPC, and distributed computing workload. And with the last one, which is the R7IZ, instances are a great match for EDA, which stands for Electronic Design Automation. It's also good for like financial workload and simulation workload. And also, I forgot, they're great hosts for like relational databases and other commercial softwares. Okay, let's see here, make sure I covered. Okay, so here we have the new Graviton, which is like the third generation of Graviton instances, C7GN. Uh, I mean, so this one right here is also built on using also like the Nitro V5, which is the fifth generation of those Nitro card. They also offer up to 200 gig uh, bit per second of network bandwidth and up to 50% higher packet processing performance than the existing Graviton-based EC2 instances. These new instances are ideal for running the most demanding network-intensive workload, again, such as network virtual appliances, data analytics, and CPU-based for like AI/ML, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning. They are available in multiple sizes, up to 64 virtual CPUs and 128 gig of memory RAM. Here we have the new Graviton 3E instances. Also, this is also a third generation of Graviton. This is mainly for HPC workload. And by the way, HPC stands for high performance compute. And this is mainly for like those that are found, this kind of HPC workload is like those that I found in weather forecasting, life science, industrial engineering, and are not, it's like not the usual workload. And many of them do a lot of floating point and vector math than normal application. This is where these type of instances kind of stand out. So here, from a price and like from a pricing perspective, you are here going to kind of be saving. I mean, for the same kind of amount of uh, of pricing, you are here provided like 35% for the HPL and 12% for the GROMAX and 30% for the financial options pricing. And what I mean by this is that so the first one here, it will provide you with like, of course, higher performance, even though you are kind of paying for the same amount for the G3 that is next. So this is kind of more of an enhanced, I will say, feature. Jump into the next one right here. This is the Amazon EC2 HPC 6. Again, the sixth generation. The I again stand for Intel. So these instances are optimized to efficiently run memory bandwidth bound, data intensive, high performance computing HPC workload. And why kind of like why this is important? This is for more of like specialist workload requiring high, like very high performance. These instances are more efficient and therefore cost effective and can perform better. These type of instances, they are optimized to deliver these type of capability that is made for the HPC. They have the hyper-threading is disabled to increase the virtual CPU throughput up to 5 gig per second memory bandwidth per each virtual CPU. Of course, and I don't want to go and just read through this, but you guys are able to see the numbers over there. Like they deliver 200 gig of network bandwidth, and um, they these like you can access these type of EC2 instances and they are like in a single availability zone in each region. And as of now, as of today, and I'm talking here only about the US, they are only available in the US East 2, which is Ohio, and one of the GovCloud regions, which is in US West. Jump into the next one. This is like the AWS inferential accelerators that are designed to deliver again high performance at the lowest cost in Amazon EC2 for more demanding deep learning inference application. So these type of instances, which are the INF2, they are powered by up to 12 AWS Inferentia 2, which is our third AWS design deep learning accelerators. These type of instances offer 3 times higher compute performance and up to 4 times the throughput and up to 10 times lower the latency compared to the INF1 instances. You can use these INF2 instances to run like deep learning applications for natural language understanding, translation, video and image generation, speech recognition, and more. So here on the next one, now I'm jumping here to the serverless, and this is something that customers been waiting for, which what we call the AWS Lambda SnapStart. And what it does, it reduce the Java cold start by 90%. And I will provide another diagram on the next slide just to kind of show you how that 90% is getting involved in this. So what it does is that its purpose is that is to reduce the init phase of function invocation. And it's available for only Gradle Java 11 runtime as of now with no extra charge. And here what it does, so the previous, when you used to use like Lambda for like Java, it will go through all this like process, which is the one that is shown here in red. And that takes too long to start the process, then it runs the Lambda. So with this Lambda SnapStart, what it does is that this is kind of like it's kind of hibernated. And then once you want to run it, it will take less than a second and you will be able to run the Lambda function. And this is what enabled you to kind of have that startup of that 10 times faster, again at no extra cost. Next one right here, which is the last one, I'll be talking here about the Amazon ECS Service Connect. And what this one does, it focus on kind of connecting these ECS clusters together without relying on, let's say, the DNS, the VPC DNS configuration. And what I mean by this is that these clusters, these containers, they will be able to talk to each other using this ECS Service Connect. Look at it, it's like a pipe that they will be using instead of relying on the VPC, like I said, the VPC DNS configuration and all that. So it's the way how I want you to look at it as like an internal communication between these ECS clusters. And the good thing about it, it can run across multiple VPCs and across clusters. And it supports HTTP 1, 2, gRPC, and TCP. And with that being said, thank you guys so much. And I will go ahead and pass it to Chris. Chris, it's all yours.
All righty. Thank you, Marilyn.
You're welcome.
And hi, everybody. Chris Bladen here. I'm going to share my own slides here. I am like John and Marilyn, I'm a solution architect. I'm actually based in Birmingham, like John. And I've been with AWS about 3 years. Before that, I worked in healthcare. I worked for United Health and some other places like that. So I worked a lot, but primarily like in the Birmingham area. So John and I kind of represent John, I think, represents Alabama. I represent with Daphne, Alabama and Mississippi. So and like I said, I have a specific healthcare background, so I'm always interested in the healthcare related items here. So we're going to start off talking about the AWS AI/ML services and just those additions to those services that have been added in reInvent. So if you're not familiar with SageMaker, I highly suggest you go out and take a look at it because it is really cool to play around with and very fun. It's a full set of itself services that under the kind of moniker of SageMaker. And SageMaker, for those that don't know, SageMaker is offers a zero code or low code or full code experience. So you can be anything in that range. If you're a diehard coder, you can code in Jupyter notebooks and code up all of your AI/ML, and it's got a whole kind of like Jupyter notebook based experience. There's a low code experience where the uses SageMaker Canvas, and then there's a no code experience as well. So there's something for everybody in SageMaker. So if you haven't played around with it, I suggest it's got something for everybody in it. So so let's talk about some of the additions to SageMaker. They've added into SageMaker now built-in simplified data preparation. And before that, data preparation was actually kind of a separate piece of SageMaker. Now they've integrated the data prep into the SageMaker services and into the SageMaker notebooks. So that lets you, using SageMaker, automatically generate kind of visualizations on top of your data, helps you understand how your data is distributed when you're in the learning process, helps you identify data quality issues like missing values, invalid data, outliers, things like that. And you can select columns in your data, and you can generate specific columns, specific insights into that, like imbalances and high correlation values, low correlation values, things like that. And it also has recommendations for transforming some of that data. So right in the Jupyter Notebook, it gives you really, really a powerful capability when you're in that training mode. It also enables real-time collaboration. So SageMaker Studio now offers the ability and things called shared spaces that gives you, the data science team and ML teams in general, a workspace where they can read and edit and run notebooks in a collaborative sense. So before, you as a data science person, you just had your data, you just had your notebook, but you couldn't really share that with other people. So now with real-time collaboration and shared notebooks, that gives you that ability. And finally, there's a new notebook capability that automatically converts your notebook code into a production-ready job. So now you can just take your notebook that you've been working on and training And without having to manage underlying infrastructure, you can promote it through your kind of software development life cycles and promote it into a production job. So very, very handy, and kind of like completes that whole vision of training all the way into production. And that's and this slide is really just kind of showing that idea here, that that kind of idea of training your notebook in the IDE, and then building a training job, and then deploying the model out to SageMaker, and the way that's represented in SageMaker is as an endpoint that then you can call. Next, on the AI ML front, we've got SageMaker Geospatial Machine Learning, and this is in conjunction with our location services. So that's also something that I would suggest you take a look at if you're interested in location services. So that's like, geocoding and all that kind of stuff. With location services, you can visualize on a map, you can search points of interest, you can optimize your delivery routes, or track your assets, or use geofencing, all those things that you want to do with location services. And with these new geospatial ML abilities, it gives you an ability to build and train and deploy machine learning models on top of that geospatial service data. And so that gives you things like, you can assess risk for insurance, for example. You can validate claims in insurance. There's for fraud detection. You can analyze maybe the impact from a natural disaster, or look at the local economy impact from a natural disaster. If you're in logistics, you can track your trucks and learn routes and things like that. You can track construction projects. In the financial industry, you've got all the financial prediction around forecasting market commodities and things like that. So lots and lots of really cool stuff there, and definitely interesting if you're in those kind of geospatial prediction areas. SageMaker Data Wrangler, we kind of talked about this sort of a little bit, but this makes it easy in conjunction with the SageMaker Notebook and your ability to train models. This gives you the ability to prepare your data and the processing workloads that will feed into your jobs. So this significantly simplifies that data prep step that you kind of go through. So all that data quality issues where maybe there's missing values, or there's outliers, or there's pieces of data that you don't want to have in your data set. You can also you can actually reuse your transformation data and the flows that go into that in both stages of your model training and in your inference. So in other words, you kind of train your model first on a set of data, and then you run the actual model in an inferencing pipeline, and that flow that goes with both of those can be shared across that whole workflow. So that makes it really easy. It's really time it's time saving on your behalf. So it helps out the data scientists go faster. And a couple other new features in SageMaker that I thought were kind of cool. You can, as you're building out your AI ML models, one of the things that's hard to do is to you're kind of testing your model, and you test it in dev, but then you have to actually get it out to production. And one of the kind of steps of doing that is very helpful is this new feature called shadow mode. And what that means is you can deploy your model out into production, but in a shadow mode, where the live inferencing model, the one that's the production one, is still running. But what it's doing is it's copying requests, and it's sending them in parallel to your shadow mode model. And so that allows you to test in parallel with your actual model. You can test your shadow model and make sure that it's working properly on production data. And so that eliminates a lot of errors and bad deploys, and add models and all that kind of stuff. That lets you, be pretty sure that the model you're going to deploy out there is going to behave as you expect it to. And the second thing, Amazon SageMaker Jumpstart is it's a machine learning hub, and it helps you accelerate your whole journey. So it helps you with access to built-in algorithms, pre-trained models, um, and it helps you with the task of sort of that the whole process of machine learning and training, and the sort of, like, for lack of a better word, the software development lifecycle that goes with that. And lastly, you can now share models back and forth. I actually showed that before, but the ability to share models between other data scientists is like super useful, because in some cases, or in many cases in machine learning, you can be in sort of collaborative mode. It makes it a lot easier. Amazon Comprehend is our natural language processing service. In the world of sort of semi-structured documents like PDFs and things like that, this is part of that pipeline that might start with OCRing. So using our service, our OCR service that's called TextRack, you might start with scanning a document with TextRack, scanning that, and then passing that through a natural language processing service, like, and that's what Comprehend does. Now, Comprehend, this new Comprehend for intelligent document processing, adds the ability to classify documents without extracting the text first. So that's so it kind of like accomplishes a couple steps for you very quickly. So it speeds up your ability to kind of implement these workflows. Amazon Kendra is our intelligent document search service, or just intelligent search service. And what this particular and so you can use it. It's like a it's an internal document search that you can spread out across your entire enterprise and do document search, and it's really, really super good. This is the search service that we use internally in Amazon. And this edition is adding tabular search for data. So you can see here they've put up here, what's the credit card with the lowest annual fees. In order to do that, the indexing system behind the scenes has to be able to understand tabular data. So that's what is kind of being shown here. So if you've got a credit card, so you've got a bunch of credit card companies out there that offer their annual fees, but it's in a tabular form, those indexers behind the scenes have to be able to query that data and then store that data in a way that then you can search for it. So super cool technology, and very, very handy for internal searches. Amazon Code Whisper, there's a lot here, but this thing, suffice it to be said, this is like an AI-powered, very, very cool technique or technology for when you're in your IDE. You can just kind of start typing code, or you can type code in a comment. So you can comment at the top of your code and say, this function, you can see it in the example here. It says function to get a file from a URL. Well, that little comment right there can be used then to actually generate the code that actually does that. So Code Whisper it's fairly amazing when you watch it at work. It's super cool. So if you're ever interested in that, it runs in all the popular IDEs, so it's something you can download and try out. Application Composer, this is an AWS application that helps you visually compose AWS applications. So applications that you can build your visual interface, and then by dragging and dropping, and then it'll help you configure the backend services that hook up to AWS. So it allows you to very, very rapidly build AWS applications. Okay, and now we're going to talk a little bit on the analytics front here. The AWS Glue data quality. This is a very handy service that runs in conjunction with AWS Glue, which is our serverless ETL integration service. And if you haven't looked at AWS Glue, and if you're using any number of other ETL services, Informatica, Talend, all those kinds of things like that, SSIS, uh, those are then you should look at AWS Glue. Super amazing capability. It can use out of the box ETL services, but it also has you can fall back eventually to code in a variety of languages, and it uses also a Jupyter Notebook style interface, but it'll generate highly parallelized Apache Spark based ETL jobs. So super fast and very and when you're not using it, you don't pay. So again, AWS is a model of pay as you go. So very nice from that standpoint. So in the addition here is data quality, and that's a service that has added a few pieces of data, pieces of service that you tend to use all the time. So it can generate rules automatically for you by just looking at your data. So you can show it a sample of your data, and it can automatically generate quality rules that say, for example, this column can never be null. This column has to be in this range. This, so you can catch outliers, you can catch null data. Very handy for running your data into a data lake or into a data warehouse where you're trying to guarantee some kind of data quality as that goes in. And of course, as always, it's pay-as-you-go pricing. There's no lock-in. The code is actually the code that you write in these data quality and in Glue in general are open source libraries. So you're not really locked into any kind of particular vendor platform with AWS. So also nice. Amazon Redshift streaming ingestion support. So this gives customers the ability to stream data from a variety of sources automatically into Redshift. So this makes it so you don't have to write as much kind of boilerplate code around streaming. So if you have a streaming a platform and you want to run real-time insights into a data warehouse like Redshift, this gives you that ability from something like Kinesis, our streaming service, or managed streaming for Apache Kafka. So we support both. And there's lots and lots of technology that can go into that. You can also, because of that, you can do real-time ETL, meaning real-time transformation on the data as it's streaming into your data warehouse. So also very, very handy there for if you would normally be writing, say, standalone code or code that you run on EC2 or something to do batch processing of that or real-time processing. Here with Kinesis or managed streaming for Kafka, you can inject that code and you can perform very, very complex transformations on your data before it goes into Redshift. Also supported here are the ability to ingest data into your data warehouse without staging to S3. So, typically when you're performing that ingest, you have to kind of hop it through hops and use storage at each of the points like S3. In this particular case, you don't have to do that. So it's all kind of streamlined for you. This pipeline I talked about can use SQL. That's another handy thing for people who are analytics people. We always like to talk in SQL. We don't want to have to write code in Java or something. So this uses a familiar SQL dialect, and you can write transformations, you can do aggregations and all kinds of fancy stuff on that data as it streams in, and you don't have to write separate code, like I said. And of course, because it's a streaming platform, it can process gigantic amounts of data. So this is where you would typically do things on where you're looking for real-time insight and where you've got to get very, very quick insight out of these data as they're flowing through. Amazon Redshift multi-AZ. So this is enables a multi-AZ but single endpoint, so you can span compute clusters across multiple availability zones, and that handles the case if there's an AZ failure, your applications that are using your data warehouse can continue to work. There's no idle capacity, and you can, or this takes advantage of the fact that you don't have to have idle capacity, in other words. and you can leverage all the compute resources and continuously run your applications even when an easy failure has occurred. So this doesn't happen often, almost never, but the idea is to plan ahead for these potential failures rather than hide your head in the sand. Our suggestion is always plan and assume that these failures could happen, so the architecture is resilient. So in this case, this gives you the ability to even have your data warehouse up at a high availability. This is kind of a small feature, but I'm an analytics guy, so I like stuff like this. Amazon Redshift dynamic data masking. So this gives the ability to mask the data if you've got, say, PII in healthcare, PHI, and so you can using security policies, you can manage who can see PII and store that sensitively in your data warehouse, and that's hugely important for compliance. Where you're trying to seek compliance, where you've got sensitive information. There's a lot that goes into this. It can be kind of customized. It can, if you've got custom PIIs information also. So that's a nice little feature. Redshift auto copy from S3 is the ability to copy automatically from, say, you're storing your data in a say a data lake. This gives you the ability to sort of do automatic ETL without having to really build all those ETL processes. And along the same lines, Aurora Zero ETL integration is a similar concept. Again, it gives you the ability to drive and build ETL processes out of your data lake into Redshift and Aurora without having to build full-blown ETL pipelines. Amazon Quick Queue. If our data visualization system is called QuickSight. If you haven't looked at it, I love QuickSight. It's super easy to use, and it's similar to Tableau, is how I would say it. But it's kind of like Tableau, but it doesn't have all the complexity and all the fancy features of Tableau. But it's a really easy thing to get into. Very easy for people to use. It has the ability for you to ask questions. That's what this queue is called. You can ask questions of it in like a human language format. And queue automated data prep. There's some data prep that has to go into preparing your data and your visualization in order to answer these questions. You have to kind of like tag your data a little bit and say, okay, this field, it also could be referred to as this, so that when you're using natural language for making those requests of it, it can kind of understand what you're saying. Well, there's automated data prep. I won't go into too much detail, but this allows you to sort of automate that whole process so that then the users of that dashboard or of that visualization can just ask human language questions. So it's cool. It's really fun to play with. Before I was in healthcare, I came from a defense world, and my job was to write simulations. So I was constantly writing simulations of all kinds of stuff. And so this is really, really cool. It's a highly scalable compute service to allow you to deploy large scale spatial simulations. So for example, let's say you're simulating the effect of weather on economy, or weather on crops, or you're simulating human actors in a simulated economy, or any of those things like that. This thing gives you the ability to run these at large scale, so it can avoid the historical problem of these simulations can take a long time to run. So this looks really super fun. I have to admit, I have not tried this out, but I'm dying to try it out. So if anybody, if we got any simulation people out there, go out and test this thing and let me know how and let me know what you do and if you like it. Supply chain, I don't know again, I'm not a supply chain guy, but this looks really cool too. This gives you the ability. It's a cloud-based application that helps you, you as a supply chain uh, a, a leader or a supply chain part of a supply chain to mitigate risks, lower your costs, and increase your supply chain resilience. So this it unifies supply chain data. It uses machine learning, and it allows you to kind of increase your customer support if you're in a supply chain. So it allows you to predict your supply chain failures and things like that. Again, I'm not a supply chain guy, so this looks really cool. I would love to learn more about this because it looks super fun. And last but not least, I think this is my last slide. This is a very cool technology. If you've ever seen the Amazon uh, sort of just walk out markets, we've released the actual technology that goes with the just walk out market. So you can basically implement your own just walk out technology into your own store. And the way this works is it uses it uses sensors that are actually basically cameras that are looking into the store. So when you walk in, you scan in, and you kind of identify who you are when you walk in. So you can see in the picture here, you can see the green gates where you walk in. That establishes your credit card or who you are. You can link it with your Amazon account, all kinds of cool stuff. You walk in, you pick something up out of the thing, and you can literally just walk right out of the store. You don't have to wait. There's no waiting. It's processing all this in fairly real time, and it uh, and so it's a fairly amazing technology when you actually sit there and use it, because it feels really weird to walk in. It's like you're stealing stuff, but you're not. The cameras are paying attention to what you're actually picking up, and the cameras know uh, positionally where you are in the store. It can also be used, though that's another important part, it can also be used by the store owner to see what your traveling path is through the store, see what you're looking at, see what you're not buying, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty amazing, and I'm dying to try this out, or to find a store that would actually fit this technology. So again, if any of you out there have ideas for where this could be used, let us know. Let Daphne know, and we will and we'll get that all set up. With that, I will open up the floor for questions if anybody has any questions, and thank you for your attention on behalf of the R3 essays. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, Chris, Mawan, and John. We really appreciate it. It seems like we do have a question in the chat. Have you seen Amazon Kendra utilized with FSX? We may have a use case for legal enterprise search.
I have it. It does integrate with FSX. So yes, yes. So the answer to your question is yes. Kendra can be used on top of FSX. So that's something we could set up. If maybe James, maybe you can talk. You want to come on and talk a little about maybe what the use case is?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
First of all, thank y'all for spending the time talking with us. That was a good highlight view. A lot of interesting topics. So
Oh, good.
Really so we have a law firm that we're just trying to entice them to stay on Amazon. Actually, they're trying to use like a little cloud app, but they're not utilizing the AI, machine learning. They've got like probably close to 2 terabytes of data. And so I was thinking if we can incorporate enterprise search and maybe some other legal AI, machine learning, and actually start to get them to utilize that data that's in the cloud for more than just, typical file sharing.
Right. So yeah, I see what you're saying. So you've got like the file share FSX. So they're sharing files right now, right?
Yeah.
And then if you could have Kendra sitting on top of that and doing all the AI, all of its AI magic on top, so you could do like text-based search on top of that, right? That's what you're kind of thinking.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a perfect fit for Kendra, and it's a perfect fit for FSX. But did you say they're using FSX right now, or they're just using straight Windows file server right now?
We got them in FSX right now.
Okay, awesome. So why don't you who do you mind saying, James, who you work for?
Well, I'm with B Cloud.
Oh, B Cloud. Okay,
So
gotcha.
we're a consulting company in Mississippi,
Oh,
Amazon partner.
okay.
But we have that client is a law firm actually. So
Oh, law firm. Gotcha. Well, what I would suggest is if you could get your information over to Daphne, then
okay,
Daphne can schedule. What I would suggest is we could schedule a little follow up and just brainstorm. I can even get a Kendra expert on the phone. That's what the field essays, our superpower is we can go get, the experts on these technologies. Sometimes they're the people who actually had something to do with building these. Bring them in if you want to do a call. We can be on site too. Since I'm in Birmingham, I'm not too far from, I'm not too far from Jackson, you
okay,
know, but but so yeah, just if Daphne's got your details, just shoot them over, and we'd be perfectly happy to get on a call and just talk through what all the different possibilities are. But literally, if you could go set this up right now, just go into the AWS console and you can just start up a Kendra instance and point your Kendra instance at the FSX for Windows Share, and and you'll be in almost business. You know,
wow,
in most cases, you've got there's some tuning you have to do sometimes with these search things, just so so it's using the right uh, so it's so it's accessing the right folders and things like that. And if you want to exclude folders, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Daphne and I would be happy to get on a call with you anytime. So just let us know.
all right, I'll do it.
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, sounds fun. Yeah, Kendra is super fun. Yeah, you'll like it when you play around with it. It's awesome. So